Yo, yo, yo. Good evening, people. How is everyone doing? Welcome to another weekday live stream. Only 20 seconds today, not 30. Oh, was the countdown only 20 seconds? That's bizarre. That might not bode well for my internet connection if you only saw 20 seconds. It was supposed to be 30. Nothing changed today. But hey, at least we started on time. Not 15 minutes late like we did yesterday, because I completely forgot the time that I had scheduled the live stream for. How's everyone doing? I hope everyone's really, really well. We got a pretty chilled session today. So yeah, should be a bit of fun. Today we're going to be checking out a channel called World of Antiquity, which I think a few of you have probably heard about. It's a archaeology channel on the good old YouTube, run by a guy called, I think his name's David Miano, who's a archaeologist, I believe, professor. I believe he's a professor, and he has actually a really cool channel. He explains things really quite well. He's very straight down the line and doesn't diverge from whatever the consensus is. But it's a good channel, and I have learned a few things on there. Some things I really applaud him on, and then other times, not so much. And I think my only issue, and this literally is my only issue with this channel. I don't have many issues. My only issue with this channel is that he doesn't. I don't think he takes it to account. I'm not going to say he absolutely doesn't, but I'm going to say my only issue with the channel is that he doesn't leave room for at least I feel. Let me preempt it by saying I feel he doesn't leave room for the possibility of bad intentions on the side of academia. So he lives in this really nice, comfortable, privileged bubble that a lot of to be honest, a lot of white scholars live in, where they don't think there's anything to be critiqued about the history of archaeology and anthropology. And so whatever a study says, that's exactly what he's got to report. Now, for the most part, he does a good job. But then when we fall into those areas of where there's a bit of controversy, he'll always err on the side of, well, what's the mainstream archaeological narrative? That will be his narrative. In many ways, I understand that. Most people in academia do that. But obviously, when it comes to stuff like, ancient Kemet and other such topics, he'll just take the mainstream narrative and won't really critique it. Won't really see if there's any possibility for there to have been anything untoward that has taken place historically or even presently. But I think in my mind, I have seen him, challenge some people, and I quite liked some of the challenges that he brought forward. He's taken on some quite risque topics, which I give him props for. So yeah, there's good and there's bad with most things. As with most things, there's good and there's bad. I like him for his thoroughness. He's very thorough. And I like the fact that he doesn't, he's definitely not, you get some channels out there and there, he's definitely not in any way, shape or form like a right-leaning kind of person. He's just very much straight down the line. This is what archaeology says. So if you've got a strong stomach, hey, you might like it. You might like him. You might want to head over there and give him a sub. Wouldn't offend me in the slightest. But I'm just giving you what my perspective of his content is, having watched quite a bit of it, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's kind of my overall view. Okay, so yeah, let me just welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. Wildflower, BA Future, Ife Omar, Egbert Sayers, RJ McKenzie, how you doing? Khalid, I think I've said Smelly already. Eduardo, welcome all. Thank you for joining me today. There's about 49 in the chat. Make sure you're remembering to hit that like button, particularly if you do start getting to the point where you're enjoying the stream. Like I said, it's going to be pretty lightweight. I'm not going to weigh in too heavy. Smelly's said, he's heavily Eurocentric though. Well, this is where I would agree with you, but I'd also just go to my original statement and say scholarship is Eurocentric, and he is going to essentially support whatever the scholarship says. He doesn't critique it at all. And that's my issue. He doesn't critique the scholarship. He doesn't critique anything that's out there. He just says, well, this is what it says. And a lot of people live in a bubble where they think there's nothing to be changed. They think that every single scholar, every single academic who's ever done research had no agenda, even up until modern times. So he'll read a study like the Schunemann study and he'll be like, well, there's nothing wrong with it. They've gone in there and they've discovered blah, blah, blah. But there'll be lots of other scholars, doing the peer review who will critique and be able to see transparently through the agenda of the Schunemann study and say, the way you've written this is really weird. There clearly seems to be a loaded racial agenda. Why haven't you included these groups? Why have you used a biased panel, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole list of critiques you could raise as an academic. He doesn't seem like the type of person who does that. He's this kind of person who just take whatever the study is, take it at face value, and then just present it to the audience. So I think that's the major difference. If you can feed through that and appreciate, in many views, I kind of view him like a archaeology newspaper. That's the best way for me to put it. I view him like an archaeology newspaper. You'll get what's out there. Okay. You might not like or agree with everything that's put out there, but in many ways, he doesn't put much of his own spin on it. He just kind of presents what's there. So there you go. But I think that's a fair critique that you've raised there, Smelly. Yeah, exactly. He's very bad at books and books are anti-black. Exactly. So there you go. That's where we are. But let's not preempt or preamble too much. We've done that. Let's get into his content. He's done a video that I thought would be a fun one. And essentially it's called the top 10 something or another. I'm going to put it on the screen. I completely forgotten what it's called. But let's get that. Put it up on the screen because I thought, this will be an interesting one just to kind of watch back with my audience. I'm probably going to get copyright struck for this, but hey, what the heck. Let's watch it back together. And let's pause and have discussion every now and then. I also think I'm going to share the live stream link today because I'm in a pretty chill mood. Okay, I'm in a pretty chill mood, and I think let me share the live stream link today so that if anyone wants to join the panel, how are we doing? We're loading,
and can jumpstart.
Oh, we're loading. We're good. Okay, so I think we should be able to pull this back to the start. And I think before we get crack-a-lacking, I am going to share the link to the live stream. So if anyone wants to join, just if you haven't been on the live stream before, I have one rule. So listen deep to this. If you haven't been on a live stream before, I have one rule. You need to make sure if you do want to join it, that your camera is on because I want to see who you are. I don't risk taking on people who are going to essentially are here to troll, or could be some kind of some bot or some guy pretending to be a girl. You know who you are. I'm not taking any of that nonsense. So I need to see you first of all. I don't require you to join the live stream with your camera on, but I need to see what you look like backstage. And then when I give you the okay, then I'll let you join the panel. Okay. So that's my only quid pro quo if you do want to join. Okay. So here's the link. Link is in the chat. I'm going to pin it. Pin. Cool. So that's now pinned. If you want to join the chat, click on the StreamYard and you're welcome to join. It's going to be pretty chilled. Is everyone ready to go? We're ready to go. I'm going to let it play. I need you to do me a favor, guys. As soon as it starts playing, I need you to just hit the one to let me know that the audio is good on the stream. Okay, so I just need you to hit the one, let me know the audio is good on the stream, and then I'll just let it continue playing. If you've got audio problems or you don't think the audio is playing, hit the 2, then I'll stop it and I'll restart it and I'll do what we got to do. Okay, let's crack.
For regular videos on ancient cultures and forgotten civilizations, please subscribe.
The past 12 months have been a reminder that ancient history and archaeology aren't just tomes and trowels and trenches. It can be intellectual hand-to-hand combat. Yeah, today we're diving headfirst into that academic crossfire. These are the 10 hottest debates, in my opinion, of the past 12 months among academics and scholars. Arguments so fresh, the conference coffee cups are still warm. Number 1, ancient Egyptian race debate. In July 2025, Adeline Morez-Jacobs and colleagues published the first full genome from ancient Egypt, a man from Nuweirat.
So there you go. He's kicked it off his top 10 stories of this year with the ancient Egypt, and he actually called it the ancient Egypt race debate, which I found quite interesting because apparently this study had nothing to do with race. So I do find that quite interesting that he's kicked it off and he said it's the ancient Egypt race debate. And obviously he's gone to the NURAP study, which we have done extensive work on, or extensive amount of focus on this channel. So you should be quite familiar with it. But yeah, there you go. Let's let it continue.
Radiocarbon dated to 2855 to 2570 BCE. Their take, about 80% North African ancestry, plus about 20% Fertile Crescent ancestry, consistent with gene flow between Egypt and Mesopotamia during the Old Kingdom.
So, once again, we'll just recap as we're watching this. 80% North African ancestry. Okay, so we have 80% North African ancestry, and we have 20% Levant ancestry. What was left out, and I think he should have mentioned, is the dates of these ancestries that they're allegedly close to. And we already know, we're not going to go over the whole QP, ADM, the biased S&P panels, the fact that they didn't include any Africans in this QP, ADM study that they actually published. So it selected the North African groups by proxy of not having anything closer. We're not even going to look at all of that. I am going to mention, however, he should have mentioned, the fact that we're dealing with Neolithic and Bronze Age North Africans and Neolithic Levantine. Okay, so the age is quite important, I think. I don't think you can just ignore that. And also, if we just look at the location of the Levant, so we're not talking about kind of like deep Levant, as in moving towards Iraq. We're talking about literally on the neck, very strongly Africanized Arab populations, probably all black back then anyway. But that's not even the top argument. The top argument is the biasness of the reference panels that they fed into the study. But I do think he should have mentioned the ages, because that puts a different stint. There's a complete difference between the people who were in this part of Africa during the Neolithic and now. Presentism is going to make everybody think, oh, well, that was a whole bunch of brown people. So just a little bit of, could have been a bit clearer there, I feel. Seche, I'm going to add you, so you could take the camera off if you want to have it off, okay? But if you want to have it on, it's up to you. Hello. You look lovely, by the way, so how are you?
Thank you. I'm fine, thank you.
Good to have you on.
Thank you.
RJ, how you doing? Getting a weird emblem for you. Is your mic working, RJ? No, you just came for the front seat. Okay, fine. Okay, brilliant.
Just FYI, I have a meeting in 15 minutes, so I'll be on here only for like 10 minutes.
That's okay. Just drop off when you need to. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
RJ, was you going to give it another swing there? No? Okay, we'll carry on then. We'll carry on. Let's carry on with the video.
Co-author Pontus Skoglund called it a rare preservation win that finally lets genetics weigh in on early Egypt's population history.
So I'm going to also kind of like chime in there, you know, this idea of it being a rare preservation win. Let's stop with the pretending that the lack of sampling, DNA sampling on ancient Egyptians is somehow linked to not being able to obtain decent DNA. Okay, we know that they're able to obtain. We're able to obtain autosomal DNA from the 18th and 19th dynasty lineages. Back in 2008, Hawass was able to obtain full autosomal DNA. Now, since then, we've had the I wouldn't say the innovation of next generation sequencing, which has made it exponentially easier and better to get very good amounts of DNA. So we could get DNA from the pharaohs. I think we already know what the answer is going to be when DNA is drawn from pharaohs, which is why they're avoiding that. And instead, we're choosing these kind of disparate, normally questionably located Egyptian, oftentimes not even mummies, but corpses, such as in the case of Nurat Man, who they say was buried in an honored way. But some people have debated that, and I might be one of them, saying kind of like, is shoving him in a pot, you know, an honored way to bury someone? You know, we already had, you know, mummification was already present in Africa. He wasn't mummified and he was shoved in a pot and the lid was put on it. So it's kind of like, it's just questionable. And they always seem to find these very big question mark passed away corpses as the subjects for their studies. So, you know, I hear that, but it sounds a bit like spin to me when I hear, oh yeah, this is a breakthrough. We finally managed to get DNA from a sample. It's like, really? Have you been trying? Have you really been trying? You know? RJ, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
I'm fantastic.
Good, thank you.
Good.
How's the studies going, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm going back to university in September, so I'm doing a 5th year. So studies is I'm just getting ready for another buttload of work. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, good luck with all of that. Let me continue.
The evidence base now combines that lone genome from Nuweirat with earlier mummy samples from Abu Sir el-Melek published in 2017.
So there you go. We already knew that this was the case, but this is exactly what I just mentioned there. This is what seems to be the database that is building up in the Egyptology reference samples for ancient Egypt, you know, whole genome or ancient Egypt DNA sequencing. What do we have? We have Abu Sir el-Melek, the tomb that was in the center of, or located right in the Fayum, a tomb that we know was not in the possession of the native Egyptian population since the Second Intermediary period. Since then, essentially, it had been occupied by only foreigners. And that was the case when the Greeks decided to rebuild. So this is a rebuilt tomb. They decided to rebuild the entirety of the Fayum, including that area that the tomb was in, and use it as one of their own, you know, burial grounds. So it would have been filled with Fayumites and foreigners, people who weren't native to Kemet, and yet they chose that as the focus point for where they're going to get DNA from and decide who the ancient Egyptians are. That was back in 2017. We've debunked that study ad nauseum. Okay, we've done it ad nauseum. Shimurka Keita debunked it ad nauseum, showed them what real pharaonic DNA looks like, and it was very African, and it scared the bejesus out of them. We know exactly what the deal was there. Fast forward 8 years, here comes their second their second attack, and we're at the Nurat, and once again they've chosen a questionable corpse. They decided to bypass the mummified Egyptians and go straight to this kind of questionable skeleton, make the excuse that the DNA was better preserved because it was in a pot and it was all dry. Like they couldn't just drill into the tooth of a mummified corpse. You know, look how many they've got. Why aren't they taking DNA from my Hepri? Why aren't they taking DNA from Amos Nefertari, from Tutankhamun? Like, why aren't they taking any of this DNA? Because they know what it's going to return. But this one provided them with a bit more of a question mark. And then even in the midst of that, they knew that they were in the old kingdom. So irrespective of it being a questionable corpse, they knew the time period was going to put them in a situation where even if the guy was a foreigner, he probably would have been of recent African ancestry anyway. So they load their entire DNA test in their favor, load it with bias. They make sure only the QPADN test only contains samples that are going to be favorable to the outcome. They make sure they only include disparate African communities that aren't going to compete too much with the, you know, with the more local signals. And they use an SMP panel that was Eurocentric and only looks for variants in basically genes that Eurasians carry. They discarded all of the local African variety because that's exactly what the 1240K panel that they chose does. It discards African data and prioritizes European data. So these are all of the kind of little games that they play to load it in their favor. Yeah. How you doing, Egbert? You on mute? Unmute yourself and
I'm doing well. Can you hear me now?
How you doing? Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, brother. You good?
Good stuff.
First
yeah,
time,
for sure.
Right?
Yes. Well,
And you
first
calling
time
from
on
Barbados?
camera. No, I'm from Barbados, but I live in America.
Oh, okay, cool. How you doing, my Barbadian brother?
Yeah, man.
I was in St. Vincent just a couple of weeks ago, so I was around the corner from your homeland.
Okay.
Actually, I stopped in Barbados because you got to stop in Barbados and then take the plane. So I stopped in the airport that's right next to St. Vincent.
Grantley Adams Airport, right?
Say again?
Or they might have changed the name, but I said Grantley Adams Airport, but they might have changed the name.
Yeah, it's not that name. It's something else now. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Okay, I left like 10 years ago.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, it's good to have you on, brother. Did you want to share anything, or are you just gonna chill and sit back until?
Just like if you ever want us to like chime in or ask our opinion, we could like talk, that kind of thing, I guess, you know.
Every time I pause, you're welcome to jump in. You're welcome to jump in. So you're on the panel now. So every time I pause the video and say something, feel free to jump in and have a Kieran has just said he's he went to school in BIM, he said. Kieran. So that's a little, you got a little shout out from someone. BIM, I don't know what that is. I'm not gonna act like I do.
BIM? I don't know that one either.
No, I'll let you guys figure that out. let me let this carry on playing.
Which tilted toward Eastern Mediterranean affinities. Everyone asked, how typical was that genetic cocktail? Harold Ringbauer of the Max Planck Institute asked the key question that this limited evidence can't settle. Did Levantine-like ancestry arrive with farming much earlier, or does it reflect movements specific to Egypt's state-building era?
Now, this is where I'm going to chime in again, because you know how I feel about the farming and domestication claim, which, once again, I don't think Egyptology has substantiated. All they've done is postulated it, just like they've done with writing. Writing appears here in Mesopotamia, and then writing appears roughly the same time in Kemet, although it appeared much earlier in Kemet. I'm not going to have that debate right now. But let's pretend, for the sake of argument, they appeared at the same time. there's no effort to, well, at least there is an effort. They probably made all the effort in the world, but we can clearly see that those two languages, those two scripts are entirely isolated from each other. There's no debate to be had. They are nothing to do with each other. So you can't say the mere coincidence of Sumerian and cuneiform existing at the same time of Kemet suggests that one influenced the other. You can't say that. There's nothing to make that kind of claim. And this is what they do with this entire farming claim, this idea of farming, but also pastoralism. They really want to push this idea that pastoralism was introduced from Eurasia into Africa. They have no evidence for it. I've stressed that Africa has its own breed of cattle, and ancient Egypt bred Africa's domestic form of cattle. It's very simple to see if people introduced a form of pastoralism, because they will bring their cattle with them. If we saw Eurasian cattle being bred in ancient Kemet, then that would be the smoking gun. They do not have that. Instead, what you see is a continent-wide cattle culture that has domestic origins. So this is just one of those things that, once again, they'll keep pressing it and they'll keep repeating it. And then the fact that they've repeated it so many times, it becomes the truth. And that's what I find frustrating about what they do. Obviously, he's just saying what the Egyptologists say. That might not be his opinion, but it's just, I find this a frustration. Go ahead, Edgar.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, it's weird to me how they always kind of assume that there has to be like one culture that did something and made everybody else do it. Like, no one, like, couldn't be like Egyptians did it and they did it too. It has to be like, oh, these guys influenced the Egyptians. You know what I mean? Because
Eurasians have to invent everything in their world. And if Africa's ever done something first, they'll have to try and find an older form of it in Eurasia to say that it was introduced, because they can't give Africans the idea of inventing anything. And it's just, it's just the way they operate. I can't hear you, RJ.
Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah. Plug your mic in or something.
I think it's my headphones. I had my headphones in, so I think and also adds on to the fact that it kind of supports the whole white is superior thing, and because when you say Euro-Asia, you're gonna automatically think Europeans, right? And so they are trying to say, and that's why they're playing this whole Mesopotamia came here first before Egypt, because it's kind of backing that white folks started civilization before black folks. So in between, they're kind of exposing the fact that Egypt is black, but they're not fully saying it. So
it's the age-old adage, well, I wouldn't say an adage, but the age-old rule that Martin Benau established when he said they're going to do two things, and I mention this all the time. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to undermine the ancient Egyptian civilization at every turn. They're never going to get to a point where they're going to make it look like a great civilization. But don't get it twisted. They're also going to do number two, and that is separate ancient Egypt from Africa. Those are the two things. They'll always do those two things hand in hand. So even when they're undermining Egypt, they're still going to say it's got nothing to do with Africa, regardless of what the evidence presents. Go on, Egbert, you got your hand up?
Yeah, and I love how, like, the whole idea of, like, Caucasian or Aryan or whatever, they try to make it so broad to claim, like, all of Europe, Asia, the Middle East, North Africa, like, everything is Aryan or Caucasian except for like a few things. Is like you can clearly tell they're trying to just claim like almost all of history as theirs, you know.
Well, look at what genetics is doing. I'm glad you said that, because this is the creeping vine that they've been sown with genetics. Because if you've been paying attention, what you'll realize is it's now become sub-Sahara versus the world. The world belongs to the Caucasian man, including the Sahara, North Africa, everything. That is all the domain of the Caucasian, the domain of the white man. And the sub-Sahara is the other. So you're either sub-Saharan African, which is soon going to shrink, by the way, because they realize there's other stuff they want to claim in sub-Sahara. So that's soon going to shrink to Negroes. We'll be back at Negroes back in 1970 again. That's going to soon shrink to Negroes.
Black
Which is going to
Bantus.
be, the Black Bantus. Exactly. That's going to soon shrink to the Black Bantus versus the entire world. That's what they're building up to. It's what they're doing with genetics is actually worse than the dynastic race theory, because I think at least at the time of Petrie and the dynastic race theory, they still understood that, hey, we're going to push this whole idea that white people introduce everything great into Egypt, but we're going to do that with the acknowledgement that the Egyptian population was black. So at least the dynastic race theory said, well, the Egyptians were black, but the people that ruled them were white. That was kind of their little compromise. This one basically says the whole world, apart from sub-Saharan Africa, belongs to the Caucasian race. This is where we've this is where we've moved to. It's actually, it's wild. And they're trying to do this with genetics, but they're not going to succeed. They're not going to succeed. Cooking up something nice in terms of my expose, and I feel like when we're done critiquing how they're cheating with genetics, they actually will have to respond. They actually will have to respond, and we're going to expose the entire game, because that's exactly what it is. They've been trying to spin the knowledge and spin the data as much as possible, but they are reaching a very, very tight, tethered point. I'll tell you that. Anyway, let me carry on.
More pointedly, does this settle the argument over whether ancient Egyptians were black, white, or something else? The controversy flares because each data set is narrow and can be weaponized. Afrocentric historians contend that colonial scholarship erased Egypt's African identity. Critics of the...
Okay, so I like the fact that I don't like the fact that he said Afrocentric historians, but fine, I get why he did it. And I like the fact that he's referring to them as historians, so he's not doing that kind of thing where he's looking his nose down. He's saying, look, this side of the argument is saying this. What I don't like is the argument he's presented. Well, Afrocentric's response is to say, well, colonial scholarship erased Egypt's African identity. That's a very broad kind of like critique. What are we saying specifically about this study? Because if you want to talk about what black scholars are saying about this study, we're saying first of all, New York man's a black man. Let's start with that, irrespective of DNA. Second, there are lots of problems with this study. Okay, lots of problems with the way the study is being executed, and there's clearly agenda in it. All of the reasons that I raised earlier, none of them are raised as a point of what the quote unquote Afrocentric scholars are saying. And I know in me responding like this, it means, hey, I have to own the fact that regardless of what I classify myself as, the outside world is going to view me as an Afrocentric scholar. That's the end of the argument. I can go back and forth, this, that, and the other. Hey, I'm not Afrocentric. I'm actually just someone who's just approaching it from them. Forget all that. That's what they're going to view me as. So I'm lumped in with this group that he's talking about. And that is not the crux of our argument. We're not sitting back like, oh my God, all this DNA's just come out and they're just trying to erase our identity. That's not the limits of our argument. We've got very strong scholastic refutations against this study, as did many of the peer reviewers. So it wasn't like it was hard to refute the way that the study was approached. Anything to add, guys?
Yeah, regarding the Afrocentric thing, for me is like, I'm not Afrocentric. I'm just using common sense. Like, that's all it is. There's a bunch of brown people on walls in Africa. Okay, there were black people. Like, there's nothing confusing about it. Even Herodotus and all these ancient people call them black. Champollion the Younger and all that stuff. Like, it's so insane to be like, oh, they were in Africa and dark skin, but they were black. It's just so stupid.
It's amazing how much modern Egyptology, as much as they want to talk about how academic and scholastic and exact they are, how much they just have fallen victim to presentism. You know, well, they're brown now, so I guess they were always... No, that's not how anthropology and history works. Come on, we can do better. You guys can do better. You know, we can do better than presentism. We can do better than just projecting non-offensive. No, they're the ones being politically correct here, by the way. Yeah, they like to always try and put that label upon, you know, black or politically correct. No, they're being politically correct. Oh, we don't want to offend the local population. Well, that's not what this discussion or this debate is about. Okay, it's about, you know, it's about essentially presenting that civilization the way they presented themselves. It's about taking all of that anthropological data and presenting them the most realistic way, the way that you knew they were as a civilization right up until about just over 150 years ago, where you just suddenly U-turn and changed your mind that they were something else. So this is the issue that we have. Anyway, let him continue.
The 2017 study note its northern bias, while skeptics of the 2025 paper call one genome an anecdote, not a...
Okay, so once again, I have to pause him here because he's euphemizing, I feel.
Colonial scholarship erased Egypt's African identity. Critics of the 2017 study note its...
Okay, so the critics of the 2017 study note its northern bias. No, because first of all, so that's incorrect, all right? So Abu Sir al-Malik is in Middle Egypt, so we don't have a northern bias. Okay, that's one of the few studies actually where we don't have a northern bias. It's in Abu Sir al-Malik. That's in Middle Egypt. Okay, we note the bias of the location because it was a Greek settlement and it was a foreign settlement for thousands of years. It hasn't been under Egyptian ownership for a long time. Abu Sir al-Malik and the Fayum mummies are rejected by both Egyptologists and classicists. Classicists say these people aren't truly Hellenistic, and Egyptologists say these people aren't truly Egyptian. That's all historically, that has always been the case. The only time that changed was when you guys decided you wanted to take DNA from them. All of a sudden you took DNA, and now these people who you historically have discarded as being native Egyptian became native Egyptians. Okay, so that's the critique of the 2017 study. It was nothing to do with northern bias. It was actual scholastic lack of integrity. It was a poorly constructed paper in terms of the claims that were made. It routinely said that the people that it were taking DNA from had no context. They had no idea who they were. Most of them didn't even have a bloody name. And yet you just decided to label them as ancient Egyptians, regardless of what the tomb itself was known for. That's nothing to do with northern bias. So let's not euphemize the argument of the Afrocentric scholarship. Let's not euphemize it. Okay. Skeptics of the 2025 paper call one genome an anecdote. Yes, one genome is an anecdote, but once again, there's still issues with the way the sampling was conducted, way the analysis was conducted, what reference groups were used for comparison, how it was executed. And once again, I will lean on the fact that the biased Eurocentric SMP panel focuses heavily on Eurasian variety and discards African specific genomes. This is written about extensively. Okay, we've got the 2013 paper by LaChance, we've got 2018 paper by Gouveia, and we have the 2023 paper by Sengupta, all of which I will be taking you guys through, which acknowledge this major issue with the SMP panels that are being used, how they discard African specific data. How can you come to Africa, take an African man and run him through a Eurocentric SMP panel and not the African ones that you have available? You'd only do that if you have an agenda, because you already know about the fact that Africans carry 25 to 30% more SMPs locally within each person. We carry more genetic data than your average European. So already by running us through that panel, all that 25 to 30% extra that you carry, they've already discarded that. And that's before they do their further chopping down. Okay, so let's get honest about what some of the problems are with these studies.
Northern bias, while skeptics of the 2025 paper call one genome an anecdote, not a population. Traditional Egyptologists counter that race is an anachronism here, urging focus on culture, not color.
And that's the problem, because the papers didn't do that. If the papers focused on culture, not color, they wouldn't have picked people who they know nothing about, because you can't make any conclusions about the Abu Sir El Malik mummies' cultures because you don't even know who they are. So how can you make a conclusion about their culture? You can't make, well, you tried to make some allusions as to who Nurat Man is in terms of his job. They did dig a little bit deeper to find out a little bit more about Nurat Man. But once again, you still picked an unnamed individual. You have named individual, you have nobles who you could have really dug into the culture. The cultural argument is an African one. We love to have the cultural argument because we will always win it. Because ancient Egypt is an African culture. It permeates through everything. That's why they avoid the cultural argument. Egbert, please jump in.
Two things, right? First thing, regarding the like offending the modern population stuff, is the same thing as how like today Americans in general are not Native Americans. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. They're just like they're not Native Egyptians, at least a lot of them, you know, that claim to be like, oh, we're descended from the pharaohs and stuff. Of course, we do have people like the Beja and other stuff who look like the ancients, of course. But another thing regarding race being an anachronism is only an anachronism when it's relevant, right? We talk about the Greeks and the Romans and all that stuff is fine. We talk about the Egyptians. Oh, we can't call them a specific race. It's only with them. Only with them.
It's specific, isn't it? It's once again, race becomes this unimportant thing. You know, oh, well, race doesn't really matter. What matters is their culture. Well, then depict them correctly. Or why do you create such? Why did the mixed race woman who played Cleopatra cause such offense if race is an anachronism? You know, why did the mixed race woman who looks like a local Egyptian get picked on just because of her association with being a black person, not because of her look, but her mere association and proximity to blackness? Let's be real about this, okay? Egyptologists, by the way, are not leading the line in terms of that whole non-race argument, okay? That's certainly not being led by Egyptologists, so I'd push back there, definitely. RJ, go ahead.
And I just want to say too, and to add what you said, brother, is that this reminds me of your Aswan Dam video, Brother King, and how I mentioned in the comments, how in the chat, where like, how come the UNESCO didn't inquire of the native populations that were around that area, right? And since we're talking about offensiveness, how come like none of these Egyptologists are inquiring of the local Beja, the Afar, or the Nubian people? And I find it quite insulting that you go into these places and you flood up the place and you don't inquire of the culture of other people. And so much for protecting ancient Egyptian culture, because it's honestly, they're not really protecting the culture because they're just saying just to buy a narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that's black is up for destruction. We already know that. You know, they're not gonna protect anything they regard as black, and particularly, and this is my issue with perhaps I'm going to use the word naive, but not rudely, but the rather naive position that Dr. Miano takes on these subjects, because he always enters them with this kind of like really, maybe he's not aware, hasn't looked into the history of these things, but if he did, he'd know you can't take lots of these studies and lots of this and Egyptology as a whole on face value, because its foundations are the destruction of black civilization, okay, to destroy everything overtly black and to whatever remains make it as white as possible. That was the MO of Egyptology for its first 100 years, which went pretty much unchecked before black scholars started entering the frame. And then, do you remember our video we watched about W.B. Du Bois and how they had that black Egyptologist, but they didn't let him go on digs because they were fearful that he was going to empower the locals, i.e. the black Egyptians, to be more involved. So they didn't even want him to show his face. This is scripted. This is documented fact. That was Egyptologists doing that. Egyptologists. Yeah? That was Egyptologists doing that. So we can't approach this like this study has got no blood on its hands, like this study is trustworthy. And, you know, we can't do that. We can't be that ignorant. Okay. Let me just quickly invite our man, Kroifadar, who's going to say his name the proper way, because I've been wondering how to say this guy's name. Kroifadas, say your name.
Hi, it's
Hi.
Fadas.
Say again?
Fadas.
Kroifadas. I was quite close.
Yeah, it's French. It's French.
Okay, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. I'm really glad I can talk to you. You know me, a big fan of you for a very long time. And I think your content has evolved over time. Now we are talking seriously.
Good. It's good to have you on. You're not the most clear. Was there anything that you wanted to add before we click play on the video again?
Yes, I wanted to add that the level of narrative manipulation that's going on in Antiquity is even greater than that, because they use the assumption that the Levantine people and the Greek people were Caucasian, but they were not. It's very clear they were not. They talked about it a lot. It's called them as brown. And the Europeans, just because they are in Europe, they literally claim them, even if, historically speaking, if you go and look into the detail of the genetic data on the Greek, you will see they are barely European. They're mostly West Asian and North African. So the lie is way deeper than that.
Absolutely. You know what, as well, I want to add to that point you just raised there, because that touches on a bigger issue that we have as well. And that is with their manipulation of data, which is really one of the biggest tools that they have. So first of all, you've got this knowledge that Africa in the Neolithic was black, yeah, uniformly, north, south, full of black people, not just Africa, but what we call the Middle East as well, Arabia. The Arabian Peninsula would have been entirely black at this time where they're taking all these samples. Okay. So, but the issue is they've already claimed a lot of these civilizations and a lot of these groups as not being black. So they're comparing one black civilization to another black civilization. They're saying, hey, look how similar these are. And these ones were found in Arabia, so therefore they're definitely Caucasian. So this Egyptians were Caucasian. But the point is that the people that they've taken to compare them against were black anyway, just like the North Africans are black, just like Takarori and Tafara, all black, all black.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
it's worse than that, because even on the origin of the light skin, they always say it's a mixture of the Anatolian that had the mark of light skin that mixed with the indigenous European population at the time. But none of those populations were light skin. They're all brown skin and dark skin. We have the fucking data. They're just lying. We don't even know where the fuck they come from. It's crazy.
absolutely. And to add to that as well, I think this goes as deep as genetics as well. Okay, this goes as deep as genetics. So let me land with that really quickly. When they do these genetic tests and they get these results, and for instance, Egypt is the perfect example. So they give you modern Egyptian DNA. Notice when they post this, oh, we sampled 30 modern Egyptians and placed them. They don't show you what these Egyptians look like. And I said this before, what's to stop them from going to Aswan, getting a bunch of black DNA, which they know is going to cluster, or going to deep into Saidi, deep into, and getting this, this DNA that they know is going to cluster amongst black people, okay? And then present it. But then when they present it, they just present it as modern Egyptian DNA, because they know that everyone's bias is going to go to pale Egyptians when they think of what a modern Egyptian is. They absolutely did this with the Copts. Yeah, I know for a fact they did this with the Copts. So with the Coptic Egyptians can be some of the darkest Egyptians that you can get. Okay. They have high amounts of Greek ancestry, but they can be some of the darkest Egyptians you can get. There are many black Copts in Egypt, but they'll only ever show you pictures of the pale skin ones, and they'll tell you, oh well, the cops are, you know, look at the cops, they basically look like Europeans. So
the Arab.
I don't doubt one bit that when it comes to this sampling, that's the kind of trick they're playing as well. Where
They do that all the time.
People who they're not sampling those Alexandrians who are, you know, third generation Turks who have the loudest mouth about being the descendants of the Egyptians. They're not sampling them. Yeah, they're not sampling that guy who just migrated into Egypt 2 generations ago from Iraq and now claims fully that he's an Egyptian. They're not sampling him. They're sampling deep where the people are melanated, where they know they're going to get as close to ancient Egypt as possible. And then they're going to present it like this DNA is representative of the modern population of, they know exactly what they're doing. This is why we don't get pictures. And this is one of the reasons why the whole DNA game to me is just a fugazi. It's ridiculous because they just get a few samples. Those samples represent the group, but we don't even know if those samples are representative of that population. And they just do that, multiply it by X. That's what DNA sampling does. Unless we get a case where every single set of DNA that's analyzed, we get photos for every person and a deep genealogical research, so we understand that person's family tree. That's the only time it's useful. This kind of like mass sampling and then getting a picture of a population, it's all pseudoscience to me. It's ridiculous because there's too many variables, especially when it comes to a debate like race, and race isn't really genetic. This is the thing. Any geneticist will tell you that, you know, race isn't really genetic. So this is the issue that we've got with this the way the whole thing is being conducted. Let me give a couple of shout outs. 1 second, quickly. Shout out to Macy Gray. She says, let's call it for what it is. Egyptology is simply a system of maintaining the lies and erasure of indigenous African history. Straight up. That's a very good way to put it. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. And James Stewart simply says, $2, thank you very much. He says, blackness scares them. For some reason, I wish I knew what the reasoning and what the logic is, but yeah, I'd say that's the case. Someone was about to jump in there.
I'll just say this quickly before we continue. Yeah, King, you know, the DNA thing is just it's quite ironic because and then going back to your Morris video, how there was a time in American history where Greeks and Italians, Poles, and even people from Northern Europe were not considered white. But now here, in terms of DNA, people are flipping that and saying now all Greeks and all these Turkish looking people are all white now. And it's kind of ironic because they think that ancient Greece and ancient Italy were all white, considering the fact that they were under Ottoman oppression for good knows how long, and everyone's mixed. So no one really could say the fact that they're 100% European here. And the same thing goes with Egypt. And it's crazy. And you mentioned the Copts. And I'm glad you mentioned the Copts because they're like, they don't talk about the black Copts. They only talk about the pale skin Ottoman, which are Turkic people from Central Asia. Many people think that, oh, these pale skin Arab folks were native to the lands, but they were coming from Central Asia. They don't like to talk about that.
They don't want to talk about Black Sea slave trade. They don't want to talk about Mamluk slavery, which was one of the biggest movements, human trafficking movements in history, was the movement of Mamluks from Turkey and the Black Sea region into Egypt. Egypt was one of the biggest slave takers globally, and they took a majority of their slaves were Mamluks, a large majority. They don't want to talk about the history. They will bring up slavery though when they're trying to explain away their 20% African ancestry. They'll bring up slavery like they're not on the African continent. But then when it comes to their Mamluk ancestry, hey, that's just, you know, it's just part of the pie, part of the ancient Egyptian pie, isn't it? Mamluk ancestry. I want to
add something.
Double standard that we're always fronted with. Sorry, go ahead.
I want to add something. Is that what they're doing? It's not just negation of Black African history. What they're doing is that they are stealing an ethnic identity. They did this before. To me, the best example is the Arabs. Everybody that calls himself an Arab today is not an Arab. Arabs were described very clearly in the Middle Age as dark black people. And if you go into the detail of their history, they come from Ethiopia. They are a branch of Christianity that started in Ethiopia. And over the ages, they literally erased the identity of the Black Arabs and the Turks, the Persians, the Afghans that migrated to the Middle East during the 20th and 19th century, literally took their identity. And now when people think of Arab, they think of a Caucasian, where those people can't even survive the environment they're supposed to come from. This is even more psychotic. They're really trying to steal the identity of some people. You could argue that it's the same for the Hebrews and the Jews. Those people are extremely well documented in history. And the moment they saw some Central Asian Jews, nobody knew who were those people. And here we are, 21st century, the only Jews we really care about are the white Jews that are considered the truest one. Even if we still have Ethiopian Jews alive and well and nobody asking themselves questions. That's why they're lying like that, because they want to steal the identity of the people.
Absolutely. Wasn't it the Egyptian president who said that the Jews left Israel black and returned white?
Yes, Nasser.
You know. How you doing, London? Good to have you,
man. Good, great stream. I could just piggyback on what he said real quick, because I was going to bring up Arabs as well as one example of, like you said, perception is key, right? Visibility. So they've done this repeatedly. A lot of people, especially here in the States, when we think of Arab, we think of like your Turkic kind of light-skinned Arab now. But the further you go back, you can just look at the earliest photographs of Arabs, right? They're black. They're darker than me. And that
they look like Somalis.
Yeah, a lot of people try to claim, Moorish culture as some kind of Arab, civilization or whatever. And even if you want to do that, you have to keep in mind that the Arabs of that time would have been dark-skinned, And you mentioned, Fugazi genetics. I completely agree. And it's disappointing because, I'm an advocate, or, for the most part, an advocate of science, but the deeper you dig into this stuff, it's so disingenuous. You brought up before sample group bias. Like you said, there's so many variables. Baselines they use are inaccurate, like for instance, with vitamin D deficiency. They consider blacks to be vitamin D deficient, but that's based on a European baseline. So when they actually do the ethnic, the race specific study, you find that our baseline is just naturally lower. It's what would be vitamin D deficient for a white person, but we have physiological differences that make that baseline okay, right? Higher bone density, a lower amount of there's a certain like binding protein that make that baseline okay for us. But what they'll do is they'll use European baselines to when it suits them in genetic studies, but when it doesn't, they'll try to be as specific as they can to maybe one specific group of black people, sub-Saharan West Africans or something like that, right? Same thing with Cheddar Man, his eyes and his hair. They determined that he had blue eyes, but if you actually go look at the iris plex study that they based that on, this is actually incorrect, but there's still a 24% chance, I believe, according to the study I read, of him having brown eyes, which are black eyes, right? No eyes are actually black, they're brown. But they completely disregard that. They even put in the supplementary data, which is unheard of. They put a side note. It says 24% likely had brown eyes. And then they put, but he definitely didn't have brown eyes, right? This isn't supposed to be science, you know what I mean? And that's already based on something that's incorrect, because the gene or the alleles that they're saying determine that he has blue eyes. Those are present in black communities, but they don't present, for us, they don't present as blue eyes phenotypically. So we have that exact same allele in our community. We still have brown eyes. They know that Cheddar Man was a dark-skinned person. So why are they using how it presents phenotypically in modern white Europeans to determine whether or not he has brown or blue eyes? They should be using how it presents in dark-skinned people, but they don't do that. So I agree, it's fugazi. I just wanted to just add that.
Excellent input, man. Excellent input. I agree with everything that you said there. I could add so much. I want to throw a quick side note, controversial question out there because we've got a Bayesian on the panel, Egbert. I have a big theory that a lot of the Black Irish ended up in Barbados because I've met quite a few Bayesians with brown skin and blue eyes. Is that a common thing?
I personally, the only thing I've heard
from what you've seen,
from what I've seen, I have seen quite a few. Yeah, there is kind of common, honestly. Like maybe like I guess 1 in every 20 people, possibly. It's kind of common to see someone with like light brown skin and they have like green eyes, that kind of stuff. Like it's fairly common. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not Bayesian,
but that's information as well, and that kind of lent into research that I had already done. That to me, I don't not ask this. I know this isn't a discussion about Black Europe, or whatever, but I think that a lot of Black Irish ended up in Barbados because of that reason. That detail, that was something that was actually detailed about the Irish, that they were dark skinned. They were I think they were the ancestors. They were the prototype of. Well, I think Cheddar Man was the prototype of what became the Black Irish. But that's another discussion. We're not going to go into that right now.
Another discussion, but I just want to say I agree. Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's carry on. Let's carry on. Good panel today.
How might this be resolved? Scale and context. A geographically balanced ADNA project from Lower Egypt to Nubia, spanning dynastic millennia, could map real population shifts, and future debates may finally pivot from racial labels and who should get all the credit. Graphically balanced ADNA project from Lower Egypt to Nubia, spanning dynastic millennia.
Okay, so geographically balanced ADNA project from Lower Egypt to Nubia, spanning dynastic millennia. That's the only resolution really to any discussion about trying to solve who a people are using genetics. You need everything to be sampled at every juncture. Okay, you can't take one location or one sample and then make conclusions from it. You have to sample. If you got to do your Nurat Man, then you need to find the equivalent of Nurat Man all along, just like he's saying there, spanning from Nubia right up to the Delta region. And you have to get samples, multiple samples from each place to get a picture genetically of what the landscape of the land looked like, what the people look like. Failing that, if you just want to know who the monarchs are, we've already done that. And we could just pull up Jourdain 2018 and see how unequivocally African the autosomal DNA of the pharaohs is. Once again, there is a reason why they don't sample the pharaohs and they keep trying to pluck up random cadavers from different parts of ancient Egypt. There's a reason why they're taking this very selective approach. But I agree with him here. This is the only way you're going to have any efficacy in terms of understanding who the ancient Egyptian population was. So this is a good solution if you're going to rely solely on genetics to make conclusions. Egbert, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was a video you did a while ago that you did a commentary on where they were testing, I believe, Egyptian noble people, and the guy found out that they had like very dark skin. And he was like, "Oh, they're black." And, he was like so disappointed. It was kind of funny, man.
I think that was if I remember correctly, that's when they found an Egyptian noble called Shammai, and it wasn't. I don't think it was even anything. It was just from the craniometrics. So they've done a CT scan. If it's the footage I'm thinking about, they did a CT scan, and the Egyptologist was there, and they had all these Egyptian people doing this, and the Egyptians there is kind of like, oh, Nubia, he Nubian, and they just said that basically based on, he wasn't Nubian, he was Egyptian, obviously, but based on the facial features, that was basically their way of saying this person is definitely black, and it's the Egyptologist who was like mad disappointed. He was like, what? Was it a different one?
No, I don't think it was that at all. It was
okay.
It was on a certain African channel that you were like reacting to the video, I think, and like they had basically mummies on like tables and stuff. And when somebody concluded that they were like very dark skinned, and the guy was like so disappointed to hear that. But I'll try to find it, see if I can find it.
Yeah, I can't. Why can't I remember that? Sometimes I go through so much.
Brother Egbert, is it the guy who said it's not the color of your? It's like doesn't matter the color of your skin. Like Shammai was an Egyptian. That kind of video.
Nah, man, it wasn't that. He literally was like, somebody said they're black or something, and he was like so disappointed and sad about it. I'll find it. I'll see if I can find it and share it again.
Yeah, find that because I like watching their I like watching the pain.
So it's, I remember going back to the Shemai one. That guy's so disappointed. The Egypt, and this is the thing is, I think it was a German Egyptologist. And he's like, this is a complete shock. We can't believe it. No, and the thing is, they're not shocked at the fact that the person's come up black. They're shocked that they've come up so black that before they've even run any tests, just based on the craniometrics, they're just like, black man. It's like, this is not even a pass for white cadaver, which is the ones they like, the ones they can kind of like, well, we don't know what this is. He's got the usual traits of dolichocephaly, but his not super broad nose bridge makes it a little bit questionable. I'd actually like to see the mummy of Shemai because it must have some really strong Afrotypical traits for them to have made that decision so quickly. I might pull that picture up if I can whilst he's playing. Anyone else want to jump in before I hit play again? No? Okay, we'll go.
Could map real population shifts, and future debates may finally pivot from racial labels and who should get all the credit to the far richer story of Egyptian cosmopolitanism.
And that was condescending. So I've got racial qualifications and who should get all the credit. Maybe I'm reading between the lines, but I feel like that just seemed like, let me make this very clear. Afrocentrists or black scholars are not fighting against Eurocentrism to say that ancient Egypt was a black civilization to get all the credit. That is a innately Eurocentric trait. Okay, that's something that Europeans have been doing unabatedly for 200 years, taking the credit for every single civilization. They're trying to take credit based on Tarim mummies in China. They do it with the littlest shred of quote unquote evidence. They'll say this was the result of European introgression. We introduced this to here and we introduced that to here. And even civilizations, Mediterranean civilizations that have nothing to do with Visigothic Europeans, they will claim that like it was their ancestors who didn't sack Rome. They'll claim it like, they weren't the aggressor. Their ancestors weren't the aggressors with the clubs and the forks and who turned Rome over. They'll act like this was one big continuum, where the Romans turned over their great civilization to us and we took it from there. And then they'll present every single film, documentary. Quick question to the panel and to everyone watching. When was the last time you watched a film or documentary about the ancient Greeks and Romans when the main characters didn't have either an English or Scottish accent? Have you ever watched a show about the Romans where the main actor actually has an Italian accent?
Nope.
No, it's been a long time.
But we're the ones trying to take all the credit, yeah?
I never
You're slapping the Scottish accent on Leonidas. You're slapping the Scottish accent on Leonidas, but it's Afrocentrists who are trying to take all the credit. Yeah.
Don't get me started, King. Don't get me started with Gladiator 2.
Gladiator 1 was bad enough. I can't even go into Gladiator 2. Gladiator 1 was bad enough. It's gotten to the point now, if I watch a show and it's about the ancient Romans, and the dude hasn't got like a strong English accent, I'm like, they got the accent wrong, man. What's going on, man? Who made it? Why does this guy talking with an American accent? It's supposed to be English, man. We talk about this is ancient Rome, man. Where's his strong English accent?
RJ, what accent did they give Denzel? What did he have?
They kept him with this, like, they gave him this the Brooklyn like voice and thing. He everyone just sounded American. No one sounded like Italian. Like
They got it wrong. It's supposed to be a strong Scottish accent. Yeah, that's what we're supposed to have for the ancient Greeks. Okay, strong. Everyone knows they had a strong Scottish tongue down in the Mediterranean in those times. Yeah, red hair. Yeah, red hair, freckles. Yeah, only half covered up. Yeah, because that's a great recipe for pale skin, super pale. You know, Mediterranean heat, half covered up, and a strong Scottish accent. And there you go. That's your archetypal ancient Greek. Please do not condescend Africans about who should get all the credit. Okay. Do not condescend Africans about who should get all the credit, because that is not. We have got so much better things to do than to sit here having to defend African civilizations from the gravelicious claws of Eurasians. We've got so many better things that we could be doing with our time. We would love if ancient Egypt was just accepted as an African civilization so we could build new things and do other more interesting things. But we're sat here every time you guys release one of your ridiculous DNA studies. I'm having to spend months of my life researching how, you know, what you've done, going through the entire thing with my channel, yeah, to show that I'm transparent and I'm not cherry picking, and basically revealing how ridiculous your studies are, because no one, with all due respect, in your industry has the guts to stand up and do that. No one has the guts to say this is a bollocks study. This is not scholarship. This is not objective. No one has the time to do that. And then you just want to sit down and you want to call us Afrocentrists who are trying to take all the credit. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Sorry, Egbert, go ahead.
I wanted to say, like, regarding the credit thing, I don't care about credit. I just care about the truth. That's it. This is the truth. That's it. I don't care about credit.
And this is it.
I didn't build the pyramids. I didn't build nothing. But who built it, you know?
That's the inherent difference, I think, you know?
And and I think this is a bit of a sidetrack, but I think this behavior is a microcosm of the environment. Oh, let me add Croy Fadai. He's sitting on the panel for ages. This behavior is a microcosm of the environment in which racism is allowed to maintain and foster, because you've got the people who actually enact racism, who carry out the mad things like the racist cops or the racist people who are pushing apartheid or the far right. But then you've got the people who should know better and should be taking the side of the victims of racism, sitting neutral in the middle, going, oh, well, you know, both sides are a little bit, you know, maybe the black people shouldn't be so aggressive when they get pulled over by cops. You know, you got those people, and they are the ones who facilitate the maintenance of this structure and continue to benefit from white supremacy. And this, I know it's going to sound like a reach, but this gives me the same vibe. You know, when you got someone, he's in a position, he's a scholar, he's in a position where he could challenge these things, but he won't do it. He'll sit on his neutral fence and go, oh, well, you know, let's see if both sides can grow up a little bit and stop trying to take the credit, and then maybe we can get some progress done. It's like, no, just do the right thing. Stand up. I can't tell you how many Egyptologists I know the ancient Egyptians were black. Smash Rockwell's got a compilation, I think, of 10 Egyptologists back to back, all saying the ancient Egyptians were black. But they won't say it outside of tiny little, you know, because they're fearful of coming out and actually just setting the record straight. So they'll persist, they'll watch as the lie is just perpetuated. It's easy for them to just sit and watch it. It's really frustrating, you know?
Yeah, they're afraid of losing like their reputation, their status, whatever. Yeah.
It is. I think there's a big fear that I've reached out to a few Egyptologists the conversation always starts the same way. They're like, yeah, I'll come on your channel. Then they go quiet. And then I know they're not coming on the channel because they're fearful. You know, they're fearful of being associated with a channel like this. You know, let's carry on. Sorry, go on.
I think the reason is because Egypt is just the beginning. Like Egypt is already bad. Like you lied about the most ancient civilization on earth. It was actually black people. You try to act like it wasn't. It's already bad. But when you realize the lie about the Arabs and the Moors, this one is terribly bad. It means recently black people dominated the world. And the worst reality that they absolutely do not want anybody to know is what we know, you and me, King, is the black nobility of Europe. Black nobility of Europe is the type of shit that cannot go out. It's impossible. And people will not even believe it for how big this is. There is some bloodline that have inherited a lot of wealth. They are supposedly the original people. If we found that your ancestors were black as night, there's a lot of explaining to do, and they don't want to do the explaining. I think they'd rather just stay inside of the periphery of the academia and stay around it, like orbit it, even if they know most of it is not even true. It's too risky, in my opinion, especially if you're a Caucasian. Like it's probably hard for them to to realize that your people lie to you for so long.
It's a very good point, because it's one of those things where it's the, what's it called? Is it the red pill? I'm not talking about I'm not talking about single men, but in the Matrix, it's the red pill. Your world is going to get turned around at the end of the day because you're pulling at a thread here. And I think on a subconscious level, a lot of scholars and a lot of even just general public know what pulling on that thread will result in. You've got that entire community now who are looking into kind of like the World's Fairs, the exhibition.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
And one of the things that community, I think, know on a subconscious level is they know that black people are involved.
Yeah, they know. It's worse than that. I think they know it's all nonsense, their history. So they're trying to find their own history inside that. Because to me, I see Tartaria exactly like when the Germans try to invent themselves an ancient civilization. Because the truth is so bad. The truth is so bad. You need to imagine what was going on in the head of the Germans when they realized there is no ancient civilization of their own. It doesn't exist. That's really hard to deal with. It's not easy.
It's a hard pill to swallow. And I think it's the other end, because think about how much benefit the lie, Napoleon said it best. You think about how much benefit the lie has served that, these people who currently run the world, it served them really well. So does it make sense for the sake of truth to forego all of that lovely global benefit that they've been experiencing for the past God knows how many?
Expensive truth.
It's an expensive truth. Shout out to James Stewart, $5. Appreciate it. He says John Henrik Clark said the world didn't have a concept of race until the Europeans put it there. It's not a reach, DK. His comment was nonsense. Whose comment was nonsense? John Henry Clark?
Yeah, because it's not true.
Okay.
The ancients, in my opinion, definitely have a concept of race. Like, definitely. Not the same as ours. Like, for example, I don't think the Egyptian saw themselves exactly the same as all black Africans. But they definitely knew the difference between the Eurasian and the African. That they knew. That's for sure.
But was that a race? I guess that's the question. It's
in the mythologies, there is always more than one race. There's always another group of people that's not there anymore. There is the Titan, there is the giants or whatever. Or even in the Middle Age, there is the concept of the wild men. The supposedly savage people living in the steppes. So they knew. They absolutely knew.
I just want to jump in. I know what you mean, though, King. It's like, did they perceive that as race, right? In the way that Europeans ended up doing, right? They obviously they saw a difference, but was it race in the way we think of it today?
Yeah.
Probably. I feel like in the ancient world, like it was more so divisions based on culture rather than just your physical appearance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Greeks and
I
Romans and Gaul.
yeah.
Yeah.
I always pushed that the actual biggest definer of a person was the city that they were from historically. That to me is the, if you look through like you read through histories and chronicles of people, historians, even holy books, city where people from pretty much define them. You know, I think it's the Bible that says you can't trust the Samaritan, you know. And like they'll know for that. It's just, so it's just it was you're from that city, and that city, you know, defines who you are. And if you look at everyone is defined by their city. Paul of Antioch, this person of that, it was the city that defined them. And I think that was even true within the bounds of Kemet. It was much more interesting to know the whole entire concept of a nation state is a modern thing. This whole idea of getting the world map, getting and putting lines around borders, I always tell people that's a new concept. That's not a thing historically. There were people who lived within the bounds of modern day Egypt who were not Kemetic. I always push that. The ancient Egyptians were aware of them. Yeah, they had, in ancient Kemet, you had the 42 nomes of Kemet, but then you also had the Deshret lands. You had people who were nomadic, who were probably historically nomadic. So I even say this to some extent, this might be the case with not all, but some of the Beja may have been a part of what made up the Deshret. Okay. They used a foreign land determinative to determine people who were within the landmass of what we call Egypt, but weren't Kemet. You know, so this is it's this whole idea of nation states and borders. That's new. That's something that was drawn up very much by Europeans when they started dividing up the land masses of the world to take ownership of large swaths of land that had nothing to do with them. But historically, look at old maps, you won't see borders on them. You go back to the original maps, there's no borders. There's just cities and kings, and you know, but that's it. There's no borders. So it's just interesting to understand that slight dynamic, because we always have this idea of people defining themselves by the nation they're from. And that really probably wasn't a thing. They're probably more likely to define themselves by the city that they were from. Let me give another shout out to James, who dropped another $5 in there. He said, notice that the only two groups today defined by specific colors today are blacks and white people. If the Egyptians weren't black, what race were they? And that's very true. It's very interesting how it kind of like always falls on the discussion always ends up with black or white. Even this whole concept of brown is a very new thing. To make space, it really boils down to black. And what it's boiling down to now is black and not black, as we talked about earlier. Are you black or are you not black? And basically, if you're black, you can't have ownership to everything. Everything belongs to the not black races. And they've got their different ways of saying this in genetics. Oh, well, you know, the non-Africans split from Africa 70,000 years ago and never the twain shall meet. That's baloney. It's a load of rubbish.
Yep.
You know, there you go.
That's omega pseudoscience.
Yeah, major pseudoscience, absolutely. I think James here's going to correct me about no, John Henry Clark was right. See, I thought that was first case. He said, I mean, the guy in the video saying we are trying to get credit. Got it. Okay, I knew I'd read you wrong there. I was like, I'm sure you're not saying John Henry Clark was wrong, because I kind of agree with that statement. So yeah, I'm glad you clarified there. And thank you for the extra $5 for the clarification. I feel like I kind of robbed you there, but appreciate it anyway. Go on, jump in, London.
I just wanted a quick little add-on. You mentioned the Beja and those connections. I've also done some research. They're also referred to as Berbers at one point. I found that there are maybe 4 groups throughout history that are referred to as Berbers. Beja, that area, those people at certain points are. I think the Barabra as well, the Nubians of Egypt, or whatever you want to actually call them. Black people in the Americas, right, through the that whole, I don't know if you guys read that Negro Law of South Carolina. and the actual Berbers. So it's interesting because there does seem to be some kind of connection that requires some kind of looking into. I just wanted to add that. Yeah.
Wow. That's
Wait,
I want to
you're
add something else.
You're saying a law in America called Americans Berbers?
Yeah, there's a
They call
law
them
called, like,
ancient Berbers, yeah.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about. The Negro Law of South
Yeah, I
Carolina.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it defines Black Americans as descendants of ancient Berbers, basically. You'll see it in a lot of certain crowds. Yeah, they love that one. But there's something to it.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So
But yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
I can't wait
We
till we
can-
start talking about this as our main topic. We'll have some fun.
Yeah.
I
You know,
just want to add something before we continue about what you said, King, about nationalism and this concept being extremely recent. They also back apply this concept in antiquity and ancient time. To me, the most obvious case of this is when they differentiate the Phoenician and the Egyptian. If you go and look at the artifact, there is no difference. The Phoenician are Egyptian. The Egyptian control Phoenicia for how long? But yet, archaeologically speaking, they will swear on their fucking tomb they're different people. When they were absolutely the same people. There is same writing system, same religion, same everything.
Oh, sorry, and I just forgot. I just want to add. I forgot. They love to prey on our ignorance as well. These scientific studies. So I'm glad that we're all waking up to the fact that your ancient Eurasians were Black, right? Like he said, also your Phoenicians, all these people were Black, because they love to present these studies like, oh, we found that they were actually Eurasian, right? But they present that without mention. You know, they think we hear and we see Eurasian, we think non-Black, but we know that's not the case, right? We know that Eurasians. We know that the world was Black basically until 1,000 to 5,000 years ago, right? Everybody was basically Black, right? Or dark skinned. So at least white science, right? If you look at skin color allele, the polygenic trait of skin color, that's what it says. So when we see these old studies and they say Eurasian, they're just talking about Black people in a different location.
Very true.
Black people in Asia.
Negritos, Aetas, Melanesians. I mean, the list goes on. And I can go off on that because real quick, Negritos have the largest amount of Denisovan DNA. And the only evidence they really have of Denisovans is a bone in Siberia, right? And we know they say that Native Americans crossed the land bridge in Siberia. But they did that supposedly like at 40,000 years ago, something roughly like that. They would have been Black, right? I think we know this. Your basal group. Obviously, Native Americans are what they are, but your basal group of indigenous people around the world are Black. So.
Are Black. Always Black.
Yeah. Well,
And
the
this is
Native
what
American developer.
I always laugh when people try and make the not Black argument because it's the most asinine argument that you can make. Oh, these people weren't Black. I'm like, that's not where you should start. Okay, that's not where you should start. If your argument is not Black, then it's ridiculous because Black people are, like you said, basal to every continent. You're not gonna get past that fact. You know, Black people are basal to every continent. And when people make arguments about, like, for instance, people crossing over into America, even the populations from which they've crossed into America from are Black to this day. So I'm just like, what happened? What was the environmental factors that turned them white or changed them, changed them phenotypically? What pushed them to evolve into being white people? Because if you look at the Indian Ocean, okay, if you look at Melanesia, if you look at Australasia, if you look at Far East Asia, the Philippines, these are all places that even to this day, after all of the brutality of the British Empire, still have strong Black populations. So what do you do with that information when you're trying to make the claim that these people were never Black? I'm like, well, where did they come from? Space,
Well, on the topic on the Americas, it's even worse than that because for the tale of the Bering Bridge that they come from Eurasia, there's actually no proof at all. You've been saying that for 40 years, and then they were like, oh yeah, there was a glacier, and then they realized on a glacier there's no food, so there's no way they could have done that. So they say, oh, they actually bought over on the coast, but no, the coast doesn't exist, so there is no evidence of it. So to this day, there's no evidence. People actually went to the Bering Strait. But
They
there is
love no
evidence
evidence.
that the Australasian went to the Pacific Ocean. There's evidence of this.
Yeah.
And the oldest skeleton in the Americas is a black woman.
Yep,
The oldest statues are the Olmec statues. And they will tell you there was never been black people on this continent. This is the level of psychopathic lying that is being engaged in academia.
Anywhere else on the planet, if the oldest remains were black phenotypically, and all of the art, you look at the old art, it depicts black people, all this stuff, they'd have no question about it, right? But the implications of that are too much to bear financially, just whatever, right? So yeah, they love the lies. Also, here in Florida, our bedrock layer is actually Moroccan. It's West African. We actually have what's called a Moroccan sky. We get all the dust and all that kind of stuff from Northwest Africa. It all settles here in Florida. So now they're, as soon as they make a discovery, everything's revised, right? So, like you said, there's no proof of the Bering Strait, that theory, right, or hypothesis. I would say it's more so a hypothesis. But just like they could have crossed the Bering Strait, they could have also crossed directly from West Africa into the eastern coast of the Americas. And I think that's why when you see colonial records of their encounters, especially along the eastern coast, you see descriptions of black people, even in Nova Scotia. And that's actually one of the closest places to West Africa.
Yeah, you're hella correct.
So, yeah.
I will add something even crazier. I don't know if you know, but in biology, there's a mystery on how monkeys got to the Americas. They don't know how there is so many species of South American monkey. And the prevalent scientific theory right now, I'm not kidding you, is that a small amount of monkeys fold themselves into a makeshift raft and went through the current to the Americas. And they will tell you black people never did this. Monkeys did this.
Monkeys can sail.
We did not do this.
Monkeys can sail by themselves. That's more logical than black people taking monkeys over in a boat.
That's what they're saying.
Some serious pathological demons.
Somehow the monkeys got there.
It's crazy.
There's not black people.
What the hell? We believe we found the monkey boat. The fabled monkey boat on the coast of New York. This is how this breed of monkey outwitted the African. Stay tuned.
Go research it.
Sorry.
Go research the origin of South American monkeys. You'll see that they say they come from Africa, but on a makeshift craft.
I refuse. I'm having.
Let me tell you. Go look. It's crazy.
The monkeys were fleeing African persecution.
Right?
Oh man, that is quality. That is absolute quality, man.
Good.
Oh man, that's good. That's good. Wesker, I was thinking you needed to join the chat and talk to these guys about tomatoes and potatoes, man, because the conversation's kind of gone there now.
Tomatoes
and potatoes. He's got a very strong theory that he proposed my way that he should share with everyone. I'm not sure if he's gonna join though. Would be cool if he did.
I'd like to hear because I know they're native to the Americas. I know tomatoes are native to the Americas. From what I've heard, I'd like to, stay on.
All right, let's finish. In fact, we're not going to finish this video by Dr. Miano. Maybe we'll just let him finish this one point. This was not the point. I didn't think we were gonna go in that much on the few points that he's raised, but it just kind of went that way. So I think this is his last kind of point on this one. And there we go. He's here. Let's let Wesker come in and present his findings or his thoughts. How you doing, sir?
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So recently I've been, talking with him. I really don't know how I missed this, because I've really been fascinated by the connection between America and Africa. So recently I just found out that Europe has been so dependent on potatoes. They even had that whole thing where they how to trick the locals into stealing potatoes to get them to like it. And only for me to find out that potatoes originated in America, you know. And
Just pause
also,
for a second. Sorry, Wesker. Have you got
yeah,
what are you using for your mic at the moment?
sorry.
What are you using for your mic at the moment?
Okay, my AirPods.
Yeah, your mic ain't great. I don't know if you can use your actual phone mic or something.
Yeah, I can't hear
All right,
perfectly.
I got you. Hold on a
Was
second.
that just me?
No, me
No,
too. It
yeah,
chopped a little bit.
yeah. He's kind of faint. Hard to make out.
Talk again,
I'm,
Wesker.
I'm speaking directly now.
Much
Is
better,
that
much
better?
better, much better.
If you can start
Yeah,
over
I'm
too, by the way.
speaking directly now. All right,
Start
all
again.
right,
Yeah.
all right. Sure, no problem. So I was looking into Europe's dependency on potatoes, and then I found out very recently that potatoes originated from America. And not just potatoes, tomatoes too. Oh yeah, by the way, they would rather claim that tomatoes floated on the ocean to Africa than consider a possible trade between America and Africa, which is very crazy. That monkey talk really got me laughing. So you know, so when it comes to tomatoes, Africa has a lot of tomato-based dish. We have a lot of them. They are among my top favorites as a Nigerian. And we also know that Spain got lucky in that aspect. After the Moorish invasion, they also got to have some tomato dishes. So there's this idea that all the American crops found in Africa, we have cassava, tomato, potatoes. Am I missing any other one? Yeah, even potatoes too. So basically, I've mentioned at least 5 crops here. There might be more that I don't even know about. So basically, Europeans are claiming that all these crops were introduced into Africa through the European trade exploration with America, which is crazy because when you look at each of these crops, what you realize is that the variety of dishes that Africans have made out of each of these crops, the method of cultivating each of these crops, you can't just credit it to Europe. Why didn't Europe take good use of this opportunity? Were they just a pipeline that was just mindlessly bringing things for Africa to culturally expand on? It makes absolutely no sense. So cassava, for instance, cassava spread is basically from Africa to Asia. All of coastal Asia, India, South Asia, even the Chinese, around the coast of the whole of Asia, they all have cassava. And then when you come to Africa, I think it's mostly localized to West Africa, but I might be wrong on that. So cassava is normally poisonous. You get most of the species, they have this high cyanide content. So to get access to that rich starchy food, that is really nutritious, you need to process the cassava in such a way that the cyanide is filtered out. So that's a very highly specialized skill that basically each culture had to either find out on its own, or the culture had to spread, for people to depend on cassava. And Europeans, they want to take credit for this when they cannot even plant or culturally process cassava. Isn't that crazy? When you think about it. So
It's very logical. Sorry, I just wanted to say that what you're saying is very logical. The
yeah,
complexity of a lot of these produce doesn't make any sense in a colonial environment, to that they would train Africans how to cultivate it, whilst they're colonizing and stealing from them. It makes zero sense. Why are they going to introduce new crops and be like, hey, look, grow this, you're going to really enjoy this sweet corn? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
And
So,
and they themselves in Europe will retain little to no, no skill of cultivation or even enjoy the important. Like it makes no sense. Like how do you introduce something so nutritious, so important, and then you gain nothing from it, but you introduced it to others? I'm not buying it at all.
it's very un-European behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more example of connection like that they refuse to explain. Like when they found cocaine in the mummies, they were like,
Yeah.
Yeah, the cocaine. Yeah.
He's with was it cocaine in the stomach or tobacco? I can't
was
remember.
coca,
Yeah.
was coca in the stomach. So inside the tissue, and they say, oh, it's probably contamination. It's like, what the fuck is going on? It's inside, it's not outside. And they just deny it. There is a legend from Nigeria of a queen that made the streets of a city with maize.
Oh yeah,
Portion of
Ileife.
yeah.
Yes.
There's that too.
So the
And Ivan Van Satima also documented a lot of foods from Africa that was found in the Americas, like cassabas, for example, when they come off the top of my mind. So there's a lot of examples. They just never talk about it.
King, and everybody on the panel. I found something very interesting, and this is something I found quite a few years back, and it's the connection between African people and the Pacific Islanders, and how culturally speaking they kind of have a similar culture. For example, many people think of surfing as native Hawaiian thing, right? It's invented in the Pacific by native Hawaiian Islanders, but I never knew that surfing is also an African sport. I never knew, particularly on the west coast of Africa. And so I found that particularly interesting. Maybe there's a connection there because two separate people from different places in the world are doing.
a pleasant surprise for me.
Yeah.
I was like, I've never heard that before, so that's amazing to hear.
I found it interesting because how it's it was used as a sport in West Africa amongst some West African tribes as for fun and stuff. And I never knew that. So that's something I found pretty interesting. I'll look more into it. So I don't have too much detail, but I'll look into that stuff.
That's dope.
Yes, and those Pacific Islanders, they use reed boats.
Wesker, give me 1 second. I just want to give a couple of shout outs because there have been a couple that I've been waiting. Macy said here that the guy's projecting, talking about credit, and there's another one that came in I want to shout out as well. Dregar said they knew how to party. Before we talk about cocaine in the Egyptians there. So yeah. Thank you very much, guys. That's hilarious.
I want to add, to me personally, Pacific Islanders and even Samoans, that kind of stuff. To me, they look phenotypically like a mixture of African and Asian. To me, that's what they look like.
Yeah.
No, I disagree on that.
I think some look strongly purely African. I think some look really African. Some look like a mix. I think just by default of location, you get that kind of nuance where some of them are more towards the Asian and some of them are more towards the African. But then you get very strong African trend lines through Pacific Islanders. They've also got that little Denisovan twist where they're very they're massive, aren't they?
Yeah, and a lot of them have afros and everything.
Yeah.
So they still use the reed boats, The Pacific Islanders, they still use the reed boats, and West Africa used to use the reed boats, but I don't know if any part of West Africa has preserved that culture. So that's also a strong African link.
Yeah, and I have people in my family that look strong, like just like Negritos, Melanesians. I have people, and from the blackest ones to the more Asian-looking ones. And then if I take DNA with a grain of salt, but you can extrapolate some things from it. Through all the testing I've done, there's always some kind of Negrito link in all my DNA. Every time there's a Melanesian link and a Negrito link. So there's something there. So I encourage everybody as well. Like, DNA testing is whatever, but if you're privileged enough to be able to do some kind of genealogy research, it ties a lot of things together for people, that some things that you might think are far-fetched. I remember the first time, like about 2 years ago, I kind of really was told again, because you hear it growing up from every Black grandma tells you something about some kind of Native American thing, right?
Oh,
but
yeah.
But you usually associate it with anti-Blackness, right? My grandma, not really, but I've heard it from other Black people whenever they talk about my hair or something. Oh, you got that Indian hair or whatever. Right? And I'm like, what, you just not like, you saying Black people don't have good hair? So I remember the first time I heard that, I was I was almost defensive. I was like, bro, what are you talking about, right? It wasn't until I did genealogy where I was able to confront that, right? So a lot of people dismiss it because they think it's some kind of anti-African thing. It's not. It's Black as well. It's just Black people in another place, So, yeah.
I'm going to co-sign what you just said there. If there's one thing I probably say as a takeaway, since we're having this chat, that all Black people should do is genealogy. So do deep genealogy. If you're serious about Black history, it's one of the easiest things you can do that can benefit everyone. Do deep genealogy and chronicle it. Okay, write it down. Get your genealogy done and write it down. Put it in a biography, put it in the feed. Tell the stories of your family and put pen to paper. Because
I will add something to this.
Start getting a broad understanding of the communities, what people's families look like down the line. That will start getting we can build back our history just by everyone doing that. If everyone just did their genealogy, we could build back so much of our history that's been lost, because it'll be able to just tie together so much of.
Yes, and if you find some Europeans in your ancestors, don't assume they're white people. Very important. Extremely important.
Absolutely.
Because I found a girl on YouTube that opened my eyes on the Black nobility, and she started on journey by doing her genealogy and finding some German people, some Dutch people. And she was like, "What the fuck?" Try to go deeper, and then she found some what we call the interesting parts of European history.
I was on a
Especially in the
podcast
Americas,
and the history of Germany came up, and I had to hold my tongue because we were talking about Germans is, and I was about to basically go on a bit of a rant about how melanated Germany was historically.
Germany's so Black.
You could have asked them the question: why did they choose Saint Maurice? Why did the Germans for more than 500 years had a Black mascot? Why? I want the German people to explain that to me. They can't. They're incapable of doing it.
Well, here's the bigger question: is it always St. Maurice?
No, and it's mostly all Black nobility families.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, but
St. Maurice is way too much credit in Germany.
The explanation is, it's just St. Maurice, it's just St. Maurice. Okay, then why are Germans obsessed with a Black man? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I love it. It's 22.
It's a question too. Why are you obsessed with Black men during the Middle Ages? That's weird.
Yeah, it's like you either have to admit the Egyptians were Black or Moors were Black. It's like they put themselves in a hole there,
Yeah.
Is it Saint Maurice and Egyptians are Black, or is it?
That's when they're okay with Egyptians being Black, when it's Saint Maurice. He was Egyptian. I mean, probably Ethiopian, but anyway. Headknock, thank you very much for your $14 donation. Sorry, $15 donation. He said, I question the evolution of white from the African homonyms. If you look at Lesotho in Africa, the coldest country in Africa and the highest altitude, Africans are still dark. Food for thought. Well, Africans definitely. I don't co-sign the idea of pale skin being a cold adaptation. It's already London already touched on the whole vitamin D thing about Black people having a lower baseline. There are additional studies that prove also Black people have no problem synthesizing it. If you take the baseline into account, when it comes to sunlight, they will synthesize exactly the same amount of vitamin D as white people, but then also a whole suite of other vitamins and stuff that they won't synthesize because they don't have melanated skin. But the vitamin D deficiency thing is a total fugazi. So then that brings into question what are the benefits of the pale skin adaptation. And
Underground.
so far on a scientific level,
It's underground.
very few. No, there are very few. And I'm not saying that to rant on
If you look
anybody
at
who's white.
underground mammals, they're all white.
What
Just saying.
caused the change then? So I kind of agree with this. Thank you,
I think the environment you're talking about, if you're looking at what would have been beneficial for white skin, I think it's an environment with almost no sunlight. So either in the valleys of the Himalayas on the northern side, with this permanent shadow, or straight up underground. Because we found ginormous underground city in Turkey, and we don't know who lived there.
Mm,
To me, this is my explanation. It's
interesting.
an ice age thing. Some population got trapped somewhere with no sunlight, and
Well, you know,
melanin became irrelevant.
you know why that would have some leg? Because if you look at the icon, the black icons in Russia, some of those kind of like works, some of those early medieval works that you can find in amongst the Russian archives and stuff, that story of underground pale people is actually documented. It's actually part of the early European history. So there'll be people who are more schooled on the whole kind of like sigillography, early European black presence in European history, and some of those kind of like early European artworks which show these things will know about that. So I've kind of thrown it out there, but there are definitely people who if they know about it, they will know that's actually a documented story. So you've made a guess there, but it's a guess that actually has some support to it. So yeah, you might
I
be
look
onto
into
something.
that. Looks fascinating.
Yeah, might be onto something there.
Yeah, I
That's
just want to
very
add that.
interesting. The underground thing. Oh, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, brother.
No, I was just gonna say, like, apart from skin color, though, like that's not the only difference. Like, there's hair texture, the nose, lips. There's so many differences. It's like, how do you explain all of them? You know what I mean?
I mean, the Indian have the same phenotype as white people. They just have dark skin. The Indian are pretty ancient, so I don't think the phenotype thing is that big of a deal.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I can see that because I've seen like albino Indians before, I would think, and they look basically like Europeans. So I can see that.
Exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I have a few theories. I definitely don't think it's climate. Croy Fatus, I think that's how you say it. Sorry, I'm American, but I definitely don't think it's climate. I agree that what you said could be one of the one of the multiple reasons, possibly. I think also maybe diet might have had something to do with it. Neanderthal admixture could have something to do with it, but that's not only present in white Europeans, so maybe not. A combination of those things. There are also maybe some weird or fringe things that could have something to do with it, but I haven't looked into those, so I can't really attest to any of those fringe theories. And I just wanted to real quick touch on the genealogy thing before we move on. In your conversation, King, with Dr. Marie Charles, a lot of people might think a lot of the things she says are pseudo if they don't do genealogy, right? So in my family, and I don't mind sharing some of these names, pretty much almost every surname I look into has some kind of black origin. My direct surnames, McCullum, that goes straight back to Mac Collium. That goes straight back to the Dub King of Scotland, right?
Yeah.
Peoples, another one of my direct surnames, literally means descendant of Dub, or little black one, right? Dennis, that surname has a Moorish crest. Almost everything, there's some kind of black origin. And then when I look at where these people were from, Kent, Ulster, right? And you can actually find Cornwall. You can find evidence of black people in those places. I found some documents talking about Negroid people in Ulster, about the black tin miners of Cornwall, right? The black Scottish Highlanders, obviously the Jacobites that were expelled, ship manifests talking about them being black. So I just wanted to touch on that genealogy before we move on. It's very important. Yeah.
I just want to add a last point to my hypothesis on the original. I won't even say white European because it's not just white European. There's also a Persian in the Turks, and they are just as bad historically. The same methods. Egypt's groups actually come from Central Asia.
You're fading out, Profadar. You're losing you. You're not sharp to your mic there. I want to give a 4-minute warning as well, guys. I'm going to wrap this up at 1:30. I'm just letting you know. 3-minute now. Yeah.
Okay, do you hear me better?
Oh man, I'm late to the party.
Hey, so true.
No.
We totally side. We totally side. We were watching a video and then we just got into a conversation and then the conversation became more interesting. So we've just been literally having lots of different things. So yeah, you're very welcome. How are you? Whilst you're here, actually,
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Whilst you're here, you just reminded me about something. Sunday, the 31st, will be a year since Mr. Imhotep's last post.
Mr. Imhotep.
So I want to do a kind of like a bit of a commemoration, similar to what I did for the book launch. I might get a bit of a panel going, and we'll just have a bit of fun watching some of Mr. Imhotep's content. I think watching some of his legendary shorts, some of the best shorts ever made, and just have a bit of fun watching those back as a community and just have a bit of a celebration of his content. So I'll see who I can get on the panel. I'll try and get some heavy hitters like I did last time, and depending on how many I get in, I might open up the panel again and we'll just have a little bit of a watch back. So I'm just letting you guys know that's going to be happening. What day does that fall on? Sunday.
31st of August.
Sunday, is that Sunday? Oh crap! I've scheduled a debate for Sunday.
Oh no!
I didn't want to move out the debate either.
It could be a year and a day.
You schedule what on Sunday?
Yeah, maybe I might move it to the 1st because I've got a debate. Well, I might as well let you guys know. I'm debating this guy. I'll do it live. It'll be a live stream. I'm debating this guy called Meta Beshe. He's got quite a big channel actually. He's an Egyptian.
You debating who?
Meta Beshe. So he wants to have.
Okay.
He wants to have a debate about race of Egyptians. I was like, yeah, let's go, man. Let's definitely do that. So we're going to be doing that.
Can we watch it live?
It will be live. It'll be live. I'll post the thumbnail and the live streams. It'll be fun. So that'll be on Sunday. And I think I'll have to move the Mr. Imhotep dedication to Monday instead. But yeah, so that's going to be happening on Sunday. So yeah, that'll be cool.
Okay.
So yeah, join us for that debate. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay.
What happened?
By the way, I sent you an email. I sent you an email this morning.
I got it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's why I raised it, because you were here.
Okay, excellent.
Let me give a quick shout out to a couple of those donations, and then guys, I know I'm gonna have to wish you adieu, or bid you adieu, I should say, because it's quite late already. So, Drega, quick shout out to you. He says the debate will be a great way to celebrate. Good. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie.
I can't wait. What time is it going to be?
I think we've scheduled it for 8 p.m. UK time. So I don't know.
Okay.
Whatever time it was today, it'll be half an hour earlier. So whatever time. And Stuart, thank you for your $2. He said, do we know when the SLC, I'm not supposed to say SLC, 245A, there shouldn't be a 4 at the end there. There's 2 of them. So it's 245A, Light in West Asia. What's the dates on that? I think they gave a date on that, didn't they? It was about like 12,000 years ago.
They say like 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, but it's a coalescence of multiple alleles, not just like one.
Okay. Well, there you go. There's your answer. And I think that's we'll close on that note because yeah, it's late over here. Does anyone want to give any last words before I close the stream?
I
I
will.
just want to
Thank
ask,
you for letting us come on the live.
You're welcome.
Can you tell
Thank
me
you.
what happened to Mr. Imhotep?
Well, he hasn't posted since
Oh,
4 years, and the rumor is that he passed. No one's 100%, but I guess the safest thing we can do is just celebrate his content in the hope that he's going to surprise us one day and come back, which would be awesome. But yeah,
Shout
it's
out
kind of
Imhotep.
been a long time now, so people are a little bit
Shout out to Imhotep.
doubtful what's going to happen. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you, King. You're a great researcher. And just the beginning. I proposed you in the chat a long time ago to make a Wikipedia of our own. And I just want to say that I'm working on it. And I'd like
Nice.
to contact you when it's ready.
That's excellent.
Nice.
That's excellent news. Let's build, man. Let's build. It's the
Let's
way.
let's build.
Absolutely, man. That's fantastic news. Thank you for that. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Right.
Nice to meet y'all in the chat.
All right, take care.
Thanks, guys. Peace.
Bye.
Have a good one, and thank you for joining. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.